So welcome everybody to today's session. We're really excited today to be talking about, taking a look at some of the biggest challenges that we're currently facing in business today, particularly as you make a shift to the cloud. My name's Chester. I'm actually lead the Chrome customer engineering team, and I've been here at Google for going on 6 years. I'd also like to introduce Daniel McClure. Daniel, if you can just stand up for a moment. He's going to be presenting alongside later to talk about Warby Parker and how they're currently leveraging Chrome Enterprise in their corporate offices as well as their retail sites today. So with that, let's get started. So let's take a look today, right? I think many of you are familiar with the current threat landscape today. It's actually quite different from the way that it looked a few years ago. In fact, the very nature of the forces plays have actually shifted. Threats no longer originate from rogue actors, right? And what we mean by that is we now actually have well-funded organizations that actually have organized attacks. So that's why we're seeing so many of these familiar attacks, whether it's phishing, malware, social engineering. All of this is increasing, not only in volume, but also in sophistication. So let's take a look. So what does that mean? The growing amount spent on information security globally has been unable to put a stop to the rising number of cybersecurity breaches year over year. In fact, this year, the security information market is forecasted to actually grow nearly 9%, totaling $124 billion. And the number of targeted breaches in the US is growing at a rate of 27% per year. So what do we do? This clearly is not a winning formula, right? And so if we're investing more to address the same problems, but at the same time, the number of incidents continue to increase, then there is a clear and painful disconnect, right? I mean, this is not going to end well. Simply throwing money at this problem is not going to solve it. So let's take a look at our current endpoint strategy. To combat these actual risks, organizations are ultimately seeking endpoint devices that use an OS with an embedded security module, one that is inherently resistant to viruses, as well as malware by design. This enables automatic support for safety measures such as two-factor authentication, smart card readers, and many more security features. So I want you all to think about your endpoint computing strategy, and here's why. So let's think for a moment in time, instead of managing an entire fleet of inherently at-risk endpoint devices, I want you all to think about how you can actually control the threat by moving that endpoint to the cloud. And you can do this by using an actual secure cloud native solution like Chrome Enterprise. Chrome devices, as well as Chrome browser, are secure by design. They deter end users from falling hostage to harmful attacks. And in the event that one actually prevails, it actually mitigates the impact. So let's talk about what we mean when I say secure by design. Chrome devices are designed from the inception to be fundamentally different, right? It's a different platform, different operating system. They're not created by simply throwing together an OS on a generic commoditized motherboard or a piece of hardware. And so what we mean by that is regardless of which OEM manufacturer that you select, whether it be HP, Samsung, Asus, etc., they all build to designs that are architected by Google. So we dictate the reference design that we use two different OEMs of choice. And with the specific hardware components that are engineered to work, they work together in sync with the operating system and vice versa. So each layer of the machine you're working with works in conjunction with others in a way that provides a unique and ultimately a very secure environment. So when you start using Chrome devices at work, your work is ultimately stored safely in the cloud. Now, given the nature of the situation, some files, whether it's your user data, your downloaded files, your cookies, your cache, etc., they need to be present on the actual device, right? For example, Chromebooks natively encrypt this data, leveraging a built-in Google security module. In fact, encryption is enabled by default on a Chromebook and cannot be disabled. This is regardless of anybody that uses that device. The hardware has a tamper-resistant security module built in, and this is on every Chrome device that's manufactured today. So the security hardware does more than just ultimately encrypt the actual data. It performs a multitude of tasks to prevent software and firmware version rollbacks. It provides tamper evidence. And a good example of that is someone that actually tries to swap the hardware out like a hard drive with a different piece of hardware. Additionally, there are hardware components that serve to protect the OS tampering. All Chromebooks use something called verified boot, if you're not familiar with that. Verified boot confirms that the operating system is authentic, safe, and is Google distributed in leveraging a build. You cannot boot a corrupted version of the operating system. In fact, there's actually two versions of the operating system on the device at all times. Through the verified boot process, if the OS is found to be corrupted, it can switch to ultimately the second version of the operating system, right, which provides the verified boot check. And additionally, having another version of the OS automatically means that you can update the background procedure for the operating system without interrupting the actual user's work. So by having two versions of the operating system, you can do updates in the background, and you can ultimately update the actual device during the session which a user is using. There are other benefits to having an actual small footprint of data on the device. First off, Chromebooks are cloud native by design, right? So unlike traditional laptops, your files and your data are primarily stored in the cloud. Chromebooks can be set up in an ephemeral fashion. So for those of you that don't know what ephemeral means, this means that all user data is wiped clean after each session. Whether you can set a timer, you can wipe the device after a user selects the sign out or exit option. With Chrome devices, your data is kept inaccessible, it's kept offline, and it's ultimately kept secure. Furthermore, let's take a look with Chrome devices. There is no longer this need to continually attend to update releases and patches, right? For anything, as I previously mentioned, updates to Chrome occur in the background without direct interaction on behalf of the user, right? So they're not, we're ultimately, as an administrator, we're not pestering or nagging the user with all of these pop-ups and reminders. Administrators can, rest assured, easily manage their fleet of Chrome enterprise devices and ensure that they have the most up-to-date and secure version of the operating system in their fleet of machines. It's important to ultimately note that Chrome is in a constant state of improvement. And with continual bug fixes, security enhancements, and feature rollouts on a frequent basis, we keep abreast of the current threat landscape that occurs on Chrome Enterprise today. Chrome comes with the option of leveraging Google's safe browsing service. Right? This is the same service that's available on the consumer side of things, but on the enterprise side, what we do is Google indexes over trillions of websites and maintains a database of sites that are known or suspected to be malicious. In the event that there is a malicious site, we'll alert the user about the actual site, and we'll actually give the option to proceed or not. Administrators actually, for enterprise-enrolled devices, have the ability to prevent users from going to those sites altogether. So this notion of leveraging Google's scope and scale has helped kept malicious apps off devices, which is present in many of the aspect features that we offer today from a Chrome enterprise perspective. So Chrome offers, a multitude of enterprise applications, right? So if you take a look at all the different ways to extend beyond the browser, some of the native features with Chrome browser include the ability to, let's say, run a customized Google Play storefront. A lot of enterprises want these features. In addition to that, you can also access legacy applications such as VDI solutions from partners like Citrix as well as VMware. While still others can run using Chrome's native ability, we also have the ability to run Android and Linux applications on many other types of devices as well. So Chrome browser has long used sandboxing to actually contain threats with browser tabs, Chrome apps, and the overall Chrome browser process. Chromebooks take this to an actual further step by ensuring that all Android, Linux, and OS processes are kept separate and contained from each other. So Google recently actually introduced site isolation, which provides additional protection, making it even harder for untrustworthy websites to access or steal information from your accounts as well as other sites. So now with all those extensions that you run on Chrome, how do we actually know that we're actually vetting and securing these actual extensions? So what Google does behind the scenes is we constantly enforce a rigorous control on what's available in the Chrome Web Store today. We implement processes such as extension reviews, both manual as well as automated. Some of these might include fingerprint analysis, reputation analysis, and we also have added a new feature which no longer accepts obfuscated JavaScript files. So let's take a look at the management policies. Chrome provides admins the ability to enforce very, very granular controls. These controls offer administrators exactly what they can and cannot enforce to be installed and run on a Chromebook. As an admin, I can dictate which policies an app or apps can be permitted to be installed, which are automatically installed, which apps can be also force installed and pinned to the toolbar. I can also blacklist apps which can be forbidden altogether. This extends further to determine which sites can perform what actions or even prevents users from visiting specific sites. Lastly, if you enter your corporate password on a site that isn't corporate owned, we actually use this at Google today, but you'll actually get a notification that your password was used on a third-party site. This is a new feature which eliminates potential phishing usage by tricking a user into entering their corporate credentials on a site that might appear to be legitimate. Now let's talk about Google Play Protect. So Play Protect scans all the apps in the App Store by leveraging our AI fed by billions of data points. We look at everything from pinpointing where to look to which results in a very low number of PHA or potentially harmful apps, right? So Play Protect also utilizes something called attestation. This is a safety net attestation API. It provides app developers the ability to determine if their app is actually running on a genuine Android platform, And ultimately, developers can also use the Verify Apps API to query the status of Play Protect for mitigation as well as remediation. So let's take a look at how all of these pieces come together and work together, which ensures that we protect the users and their data, as well as your data, and how we keep you safe. So here's a common attack for phishing, right? In this scenario, a phishing attacker will conduct research by gathering information, let's say, about your corporate employees. They might even craft a highly targeted email, tricking employees and users into thinking, hey, this is a legitimate message. Employees are scammed into downloading malicious attachments. They might even give up their password or share sensitive data. So how do we, sort of address this by stopping the actual scams? We do actually 3 things on the platform. First off, if you're leveraging Gmail, we use machine learning to identify phishing emails and prevent them from reaching inboxes altogether. But let's say you're not using Gmail, right? Chrome warns employees before clicking on suspicious links that leads to dangerous actual sites. Additionally, security keys help prevent hackers from using stolen passwords to access employee accounts. Real quick question, I probably won't be able to see you all here, but quick show of hands, how many folks out there are actually using hardware security keys today? Very few. So let's take a look at an actual second common attack, ransomware, right? I think many of you are familiar with this. With ransomware, things are a bit different, right? Ransomware is designed to block access to a computer system until a sum of money is paid, right? So out of the gate, I want you all to remember that the Chromebook data model limits the data that can be held at ransom, since very, very little, if anything, is designed to be on the device to begin with, right? And what we mean by that additionally is that executables, MSI files, they can't be installed, they can't run. They can't run locally, plain and simple, on a Chromebook. We talked a good deal about malicious applications earlier, and just a bit ago, we even discussed the security and protection controls that we use in Google Play as well as the Chrome Web Store. And I want to highlight that even in the unlikely event of an exploit, right, the scope is contained and its impact limited by Chrome's inherent sandboxing model. Here's a really interesting question that I get all the time. The question that comes up is, why do I not need antivirus on my Chrome device? A quick explanation of this is, much conventional wisdom has led us to the conclusion that in order to secure our devices, we need to basically have a stack of product to assist with securing that actual device. If your genuine interest is in keeping your operating systems virus-free, I think that the ask and what we've done here is design one in which viruses cannot install on themselves to begin with, which is exactly what Chrome OS is. Not only does this result in inherently more secure devices by design, but it saves you a boatload of virus protection subscription licenses overall. And of course, because the threat landscape is very, very dynamic, right? Continually evolving and changing, it's critical, I think, for all of us to keep our devices in your fleet as current as possible. So as we discussed earlier, the background updating capability of Chrome OS ensures that this happens seamlessly. It happens without any direct interaction, and it happens on behalf of the end user, because administrators have the ability to dictate when this actually happens. This gives everybody in the enterprise the maximum amount of protection with minimal, if any, effort. And with that, I'd like to welcome Daniel McClure from Warby Parker on the stage.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. As Chester mentioned, I'm Daniel McClure, manager of tech services. I've been with the company for 5 years now. I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary on Sunday. So technology services is the team that's responsible for managing the users and devices across 2 corporate locations, one in New York City and one in Nashville, a manufacturing facility that's about an hour and a half north of New York City, where we actually cut and pop our lenses into frames. And then we are close to 100 retail locations as of today. So right now the landscape looks like about 2,000 users, 3,500 different endpoint devices, 225 internet connections that are all trying to be down as much as possible. And I have a team of 5 support engineers. So one of the reasons that I've been able to keep such a lean, efficient team is that over the past 5 years, I've tried to ingrain a culture of self-service, really empowering the end user, using anything I can grab from my toolkit to really leverage and remove any kind of blockers that the typical IT manager would see. Anything like I don't have admin access on my computer, I need access to more services, I need my accounts unlocked and my passwords reset. So again, really pushing a lot of the work back onto the user to kind of remove IT as a blocker from getting things done. So I never wanted to be an IT team that is an impedance to work. I want to help push people into the future. The problem with this is that as we kind of push users into a more self-service and user empowering model, we have to do so very thoughtfully to make sure that we're striking just that perfect balance between user experience and security. And I think that we've done a really good job internally. So a few of the things that we're doing that have simultaneously increased our users' experience, but also increased our security posture, would be something like how we onboard a user. So unlike other management platforms, if you're using G Suite Enterprise and Chrome Enterprise, not only do you have the availability to manage the device itself by ensuring that it's fully encrypted, the screen is locking after a certain period of time, and that it's booting into an operating system that it should be booting into that hasn't been tampered with, you're also able to manage the user's experience, the experience from a user perspective as well. So as an example, on day 1, a Warby Parker employee will start, they'll come into the office, they'll get the tour, and their G Suite user is sitting in an organizational unit that has no access to anything. They can look at Gmail, they can look at Calendar, and they can change some of their settings. And we do this because if the credentials for these newly created accounts ever get out, is a big problem. So we just want to silo them off as much as possible. The first introduction, the first course that somebody goes through in their tenure at Warby Parker is a class where they're kind of led through an introduction to the hardware, an introduction to Google, and then enrolling their user into multi-factor authentication. So within the first few hours that they've been with Warby Parker, they understand, they've been explained to what multi-factor is. They are more incentivized to go home and kind of enable two-factor authentication on their own services. But as a company, because we enforce this across the entire domain, we're just much more secure at that at that day 1 crossroad. So all of this happening within the first couple hours. We then move their user into an OU that has more departmental specific access, and they have everything they need to kind of get off and going. Something else that we've done because of the security posture of these devices and the policies that we are pushing down into Chrome, we do, let me back up a little bit. I mentioned we have a Nashville office. It's about 350 people that work in the Nashville area, and 120 of those work solely solely from home. They never come into the office, so there's a big piece of this picture that we cannot manage, and that is their internet connection. So we can push as many policies to the devices we want in the user's account, but if somebody has a slow internet connection, there's really nothing we can do about that. So typically VPN has been a big friction point in IT. Anything from needing to request access and submitting a ticket, getting software installed, and then also that penalty that it can take on your internet connection. Typically, everybody has a fast internet connection, so we really don't see that speed penalty. But for a lot of our users working from home, they might be limited to like a megabyte down or a megabit down and like 0.5 up. So very slow internet connection, adding that penalty onto it is just untenable. So again, to kind of loop back around, because we're able to manage these devices at such granularity, we can ensure their full disk encryption, verified boot. We have kind of all agreed internally that it's okay to start moving some of these private services out into the public, making sure that HTTPS is everywhere, multi-factor is on, and we can allow these work from home users to do what they have to do without the need of a VPN. In our retail, shifting gears a little bit to talk about retail, in our retail environment, we probably ship 3 to 4 laptops to each individual store, and these stores can range from the number of employees from 25 on up to 50. So it's very important as shifts change throughout the day to have these shared devices within our retail stores. We using other operating systems have tried to have this very shared environment where somebody comes in the morning, they take a laptop off the charging rack. Somebody comes in midday, they need to grab a laptop. They have to do front of house, back of house duties. There was a laptop assignment where like 2 to 3 people were assigned to each individual laptop. This caused a lot of issues. So we were able to kind of replace those with Chrome OS and Chrome devices because of that like out-of-the-box shared experience while maintaining this full disk encryption, screen lock after about a minute. Keep in mind that these associates are interacting with systems that touch PHI. So everything that we do has to be very mindful around keeping within HIPAA compliance. So that's really allowed us to, again, keep a very low number of laptops kind of out in the wild and have that shared experience as well, because anybody with a Warby Parker account can authenticate in. So while we're doing this, we also have to be, very aware of kind of these 3 big threat vectors that are going on right now. And, as we get around solving for one, the others just kind of move into the back of our head until it comes and shoulder taps us and says, day one exploit, you need to do all these things. So Warby Parker kind of being born in the era of like a SaaS-based services. Malware has always kind of been top of mind. And with the ability to block any kind of potentially nefarious extensions, something that could potentially be exfiltrating data, anything that kind of bubbles up, any kind of security alert that our legal team may come across their plate and they request that we block these extensions has been very, very helpful, very beneficial. And also when it comes to malware, because everything is siloed and sandboxed into its own little realm, each Chrome browser tab is its own environment. If any incident is occurring on one individual tab, it will not proliferate out into the rest and into the operating system. As an example of something that kind of shoulder taps you as a day one, there was the Chrome exploit about a month ago where everybody was saying this is a 0-day, you must update. We were able to mitigate this risk very quickly by going into G Suite, unpinning the operating system and forcing all the devices to update. So something like that really saves on a lot of engineering resources. Credential threat kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with malware. Again, we just want to make sure that all of our devices are running the latest version of Chrome and that they're actually booting into a version of Chrome OS that has not been modified, hasn't been tampered with, just to ensure that they're connecting into our systems very securely. And then, of course, phishing, which is kind of the big hot topic. I think I read yesterday, another session, that 90% of all data leaks start with a phishing attack. So again, ensuring that devices are just up to date, regularly checking in. Any devices that we may use for any kind of digital signage, making sure that they're locked down and cannot be interacted with, as someone may just naturally move to one and start checking their email. We want to make sure that each device has its own place and is doing the thing that it should be doing. And we now have the option of choosing what flavor of multi-factor we'd like to enforce across, which ones we'd like to revoke. So very recently, we can now turn off SMS, multi-factor authentication. So NIST has come out and essentially said, SMS is no longer secure. It's better than nothing, but it's still, as you move into like the different levels of different multi-factor, the user experience actually gets much better as they get more secure. So SMS being less secure, the user experience isn't great. You have the authenticator application, which the user experience improves and security improves at the same time. You have the screen prompt where you unlock your phone and tap yes. Again, user experience improves, security improves, and hopefully, the dream at some point is to actually get U2F tokens everywhere, where it's just the touch of a button and you're into that system. So again, there's this common thought that as you're increasing security, the user experience drops, and you have to make some of these. You have to kind of negotiate with yourself and make exceptions somewhere. But we've organically kind of moved into this realm where we're increasing the user's experience by granting them the access they need, but improving security by doing it in a very smart way. So kind of all of this to say, Chrome OS at Warby Parker is the most popular computer operating system. We have well over 1,000 devices, and it has helped us scale in a very secure way. So there's one kind of big achievement there. The second big achievement is kind of sitting on the Beyond Corp model, the VPN-less model. And it has helped us to decrease our VPN use by close to 90%. We certainly have teams that still rely on it and still need it, but we're working on that remaining 10%. So that is what I have to say about that.
All right, so in the event that you really like this movie, please visit our website if you have any questions on enterprise security as it relates to Chrome Enterprise.